Well, I was going to say hello and welcome, but where is my game? Oh, there it is. Okay. That was strange. Well, hello and welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to LOTRO plugins. Last time on Plugging Along, we were working on a list of possible enhancements for the MinstrelBuffs plugin for both speed but also for maintainability. This time, we're going to dig into the EffectsList events. MinstrelBuff combines all three effects added, effects removed, and effects cleared into one handler, and I'm wondering why, and can we do better by separating them out? As always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions. And in the meantime, let me go ahead and move a window or two around. Okay, in honor of Scenario's stream, I figured I'd position myself up here way high above Kirith and Ladris or Rivendell. We've got the last Humbly house there, off in the distance behind this rocky outcropping, and some of the more markety places with their pointy roofs. It's also quite fatal if you fall from this height, so I'm going to try my best not to start moving forward. We'll see how that goes. All right. Well, I did have to play with my sound settings a little bit to hear Scenario well on the previous stream, so do let me know if you have any problems hearing me. In the meantime, let's take a look at some things. So a few streams ago, we pulled out Visual Studio Code as an alternate to a more basic text editor like Sublime Text or even Notepad for editing our Lua plugin files. Visual Studio Code is freely available online, and I highly recommend the LOTRO API extension that you can get. Obviously, I have an update. I'm going to resist the urge to update live, though. Nothing like updating and breaking everything. But the LOTRO API extension for Visual Studio Code, I highly recommend. We're going to see that in action here today. Okay, so we're going to head back to our Explorer, and we're going to go ahead and pull up our to-do file, kind of remember where we were last time. All right, so let's see. We had a couple of ideas, but I wanted to take a minute and look at the documentation, and for that, I'm going to need a browser window. So, in the documentation, the API documentation, there is, if I expand the correct thing here, we have an effect list. An effect list for the local player is a pretty consistent way of getting all the effects on that player. For instance, Affodil, my minstrel here on Treebeard, currently has 4 effects: Difficulty Deadly, Story Pace, Resonant Stance, and Subscriber Buffs. And so my effect list would contain those 4 items. And if I were to add some ballads here, I've forgotten to activate my plugin. That's going to make this a lot less visible. Here we go. Let me go ahead and drag both of these windows over. So if I were to add some ballads, we can see those happening in the effect list here, and also in the MinstrelBuff plugin. All right, Steady Eddie asks, can you use external Lua libs like IMG GUI? That's an excellent question. So if that lib is a set of Lua files that you can incorporate into a Lua project as a library, then probably. It depends on if they use any sort of functionality that has been restricted within the Lua embedded within LOTRO. So for example, whoops, I've hit the wrong key there. If I go over to lotrointerface.com and if I go search downloads for Dragbar. Dragbar is a class or a library that you can download and add to your plugin, and it gives you the fancy Dragbar capability. When you hit Control /, it kind of automatically attaches to your window, as it has done here in the MinstrelBuff. And so in that sense, I don't know the details for IMG GUI, but if that's just a set of Lua files that can be run within the embedded Lua, then quite possibly. If they're using things that aren't allowed, like networking calls or file calls to open things outside of the plugin directories, then that's probably a no. So that's a big baby. But I'm curious. So to do, well, it's already a to-do file. Look at Lua lib like img GUI. I'm gonna put that on the back burner and not worry about that today, but it's I'm gonna add it to this file because I'm interested both to see what that library is and to understand better whether that could happen, whether we could incorporate that. Cool, thank you. Okay, so we have a list of effects on our current player. Now, I believe EffectsList is a little less reliable when you're looking at other players or other NPCs, but it seems to be pretty solid for us. And that effect list, well, I pulled up in the wrong window here. That effect list in the API documentation has a couple of events. We can be notified when an effect is added, when an effect is removed, or when all of the effects are cleared. And when that happens, I apologize, I clicked the wrong window again. When that happens, in our, where are we? Probably in main, we have an effect list. And we add a callback handler for effect list, effect added, effect removed, and effect cleared, but they all point to this to the same function, and that function doesn't care about what was added or removed or changed. That function just passes on the call, stripping off those arguments, and passes it on to refresh effect display, which just throws away everything we already know and reads through all of the effects saying, are you something we care about? So when I see that, and as someone brought up last stream, it made me wonder, is that a good strategy? Like, it's certainly simple, right? Like, it's dead simple. Anytime an effect changes in any way, just redo the UI. Dead simple, probably always going to be as correct as possible, but maybe does a little bit more effort than we want to, considering that your effects can change quite rapidly at the height of combat, which is exactly when you don't want your plugin to take a lot of time processing things. So what I wanted to do was just take a look at what's going on here. And so what I thought I might do is make some changes that are probably going to get thrown out. This is just test code. And it's going to be very easy to throw it out because we're using source control. We're using a Git repository, and we're using the fork UI to give us a nice UI around that. So we can see right now the only change in our code is that addition I made to the to-do file there. Everything else is pristine, and so any changes we make are going to be very easy to throw away, or at least identify what we did. So we have three things here. We have an effect added, effect removed, and effect cleared. And what I'd like to do is capture them in some way, even if we don't do much with it eventually. So we have self.effect added callback equals function. And these functions, event handlers in general, for LOTRO callbacks, I think pretty much always have two arguments. The sender, in this case, probably the effect list itself, maybe an effect, and args. So that's an anonymous function, sender args, and we'll do something here. Now, I'm actually going to pause on editing that, and I need some places to send this, maybe for some basic logging. So function MinstrelBuff main is where we are. And we're going to go ahead and have one of each of those. So let me pull this up so I can just have that effect list over here on the left and not have to keep on looking at that. Okay, so MinstrelBuff, we have effect list, or effect added, sender arcs, and we'll do the same thing for the other two. So we have effect removed, and effects cleared. Now, effects cleared might be a really simple one to respond to. Like, if all the effects are gone, that's kind of, well, not quite a no-op, but we can just say, hey, our UI is probably gone since there are no more effects. Thorlar says, I would leave out the sender arg. If you mean it's not going to be useful, I almost certainly agree with you. It's not going to be helpful. I'm including it mostly for thoroughness because that's the signature that's coming in. I was curious to see what is the thing. I'm going to dump it out with a dump function, see is it an effect, effect list, whatever, and then ignore it. Absolutely. So for there, it's there now just from habit. That's just how I type a callback function. But absolutely, in this sender is probably not going to be useful, but this is part exploration. I don't really have a solid sense of what we're getting and how it's going to be useful. So this is just playing around. All right, so now we have some functions where we can, dump info to console. And then if we want everything to act the way it currently is, we can go ahead and call self refresh effect display at the very end of this. In fact, we'll go ahead and say that we want to do that in each of these. So at the very end of this function, we're just redirecting to that same place we were before, where it just wipes the UI and starts over. And that way we can still have a functional plugin, just with a little bit extra. Okay, so effect added. We're going to... oh, we're in the wrong place. Okay. Cool. So we're going to define a couple of callbacks here. So effect added callback. Oops, just effect added, of course. And then sender args and end. And we can do the same thing. Self effect removed callback equals function sender args. And this, I feel like, is a pretty... Oh, there's a chat. Excellent. I'll be right there. I feel like this is a pretty common pattern to convert something that is not expecting to go to a class member function. So we go ahead and assign it to a not class member function. Excuse me. And then we dispatch it off using a call to self. Effect removed sender args and end. All right. Third says it's going to be an effect list. Awesome. It's always fun to kind of validate our assumptions, i.e. the object that caused the effect. And the only reason to create those variables is so you can remove them later. Yeah, there's a little bit of redundancy happening. A lot of times when I'm exploring how something is working, it's really helpful for me to get more information than I'm gonna, or a little bit more code than I'm gonna use in the final version. And so I would say absolutely, this is a bit of a self-indulgent experiment to broaden my education, and maybe hopefully other people find it interesting as well. But I don't have a lot of experience working with effects and effect lists and all of that. So it's just easier for me to see maybe some dump statements that have that information in there and build up an internal mental model of what is this really doing under the covers? And more importantly, why did the original author consolidate all three of those into a single call? Was it just easier? Was there a bug in the Lua or some sort of weirdness in the Lua that they were working around by consolidating them? Maybe get a sense of that just by playing around here. All right, added, removed, and what was the last one? Cleared. All right. So we're going to go ahead and do self.effect cleared callback equals function, sender args, and we'll dispatch that to effects cleared. Thurler is pointing out that by capturing the anonymous function here, we're able to also pass that both to add callback and to remove callback. Excellent. What I was wondering is if you, I assume that you can't easily pass the member function like self-effect added. I assume, you know, the colon here would do wonky things. And I assume that's part of why we're doing this. And then of course, yeah, capturing it in a named variable allows us to remove it later. All right, so effect added, we're gonna go ahead, effect added callback, effect removed callback, effects cleared callback. And at that point, we should no longer be using those here. All right. And then in the removal, just when the function window gets disabled, it cleans itself up. Just for completeness, we'll do that here. All right, effects cleared callback. Okay, so do we have all of those cleaned up? We're going to go ahead and do a search for the old one. When we hide that window, we go ahead and clear those functions. That seems a little bit like overkill because we might need them again, but setting up these callbacks and then clearing the callbacks doesn't happen very often. Like, it's a manual process to show and hide the window. So anytime the user has to do something, and it's not just happening in the background during combat or something, if they're actually typing something or clicking something, then speed becomes a lot less of an issue. Like, if it takes 1/10 of a second instead of 1,000th of a second, it's fine because humans don't act that fast anyway. So as soon as the human has to get involved for it, I worry a lot less about those things. All right, so anywhere else this old callback was used? No. So in theory, if I go ahead and reload, everything should still work the exact same way. There's just one extra function dispatch in there. So let's take a look. All right, excellent. We've got 1 ballad, 2 ballads, 3 ballads, and maybe some anthems. Excellent. So that was a whole lot of effort, it really feels like it, to do nothing, right? No actual change. But it means we now have some interstitial functions, some intermediate functions that we can do debug output from. Neat. Let's do that. Okay, so first question, do we have a dump function? We do not. Dump function, I'm sure there are multiple ones just sort of floating around. I'm just going to grab one using a handy dandy text editor. I'm going to go into Documents, Lord of the Rings. Oh, nope, I pulled it somewhere else. Plugging along, plugins. And then in Cube plugins, in Deep Tracker, there's just a general functions. And in there is a dump function. It's handy. It can print out slightly more complicated structures, and it's not all the way going into the Here Be Dragons level. So it's a good starting point to dump out information, and it handles things like booleans and nils better than not. At least the one I'm thinking of does. Hopefully that one does too. So we're going to send to turbine.shell.writeLine some basic stuff. Effect added, and then we'll say sender, and then we'll dump the sender, and then the args, and then we'll dump the args. It's very verbose. And we can do something very similar for effect removed and effects cleared. Now, effects cleared, I'm expecting args to be empty, maybe the center as well, but it's probably the effect list. But I'm expecting the args to be pretty much empty because what would you need to know if everything is gone? Okay. Just some basic logging. Let's go ahead and reload to see if I misspelled any of those things. I did not. Okay, I'm going to add a single thing and then make this window way bigger so we can see some of the information. Okay. Well, we can definitely see, as we see, the sender has effects cleared, effects added, effects removed. That definitely looks like an effects list, and is pretty consistent between calls. So that being the least interesting thing, now we get to go ahead and delete it. All right, so sender, get rid of that. And that. Okay, so effect added. We have an index. How interesting. And one of the things we're getting is an index, and one of the things we're getting is an effect. Now, that effect, we can go ahead and go back to the documentation and see what can we do with that. Maybe we can get a name of that effect. I bet we can. Get name, awesome. So let's have a little helper function here. MinstrelBuff main. Tell me more. I don't know, I'm bad at naming things. Args. And we're going to go ahead and say return. And what did we see here? In the log, we saw two things, an index and the effect. Okay, index args.index. Now, I'm not 100% sure on that syntax, but we'll see. And then name and args.effect get name. Let's try something like that. That might not be what we're looking for. And at that point, we can go ahead and instead of trying to format it manually, we'll just say self tell me more args. And we can do that for each of these. Actually, you know what? What on earth would ever call effects cleared, given that some of these effects are pretty permanent? Like, would you see it when you logged off? I'm wondering if we're ever going to see that. But that's okay. Actually, yeah, I'm going to undo that for effects cleared, because I am very suspicious about that function. But that's okay. We're going to unload, we're going to reload, we're going to pop another one on here, and we're going to get errors. Awesome. All right, so 232. Excellent. Oh, I see. Effect added. The effect itself is nil. Now, what does that tell us? That tells us that we might be able to go to the effect list itself instead. So, local text equals we're going to go ahead and do the first part of this. And then if args.effect is not nil, then we'll go ahead and do something. So text equals text dot dot the rest of this. Thurlow says, I've never personally observed effects cleared at triggering. Maybe it happens when you die. You know, I'm set up for an insta-death if I fall. I'm going to hold off on that, though, because it's very picturesque up here. If well, you know, I don't have a lot of experience working with the effect list. Let's go take a look at the effect list and see. All right, so we have a get count. All right. So if effect list get count, I'm doing a simple range check. If it's greater than or equal to the index, args.index, then we'll go ahead and try to reference that. So text equals text dot dot name, and then effect list, and what's the function here? Get, that looks good. Get args.index. Yeah, let's give that a try. So, at that point, attempt to concatenate a table value. Fantastic. Yeah, that was probably an effect, so we can get name on that. That's a pretty reasonable error message. Attempt to index field effect and nil value. All right, we're still getting that on 240. Oh, of course. Because I've done all this special casing and didn't get rid of the original bad code in the first place. Doesn't stop it from still breaking. 294. All right. What do we have here? Attempt to concatenate a nil value. Ah, of course. Return text. That's going to be very important. That'll teach me to do this on the fly like that. Okay, so effect added, index 7, name, inspiring cries and calls cooldown, and effect remove, snowball. Effect added, snowball. Tier 3. Oh, interesting. Do I have a snowball effect? I don't even see a snowball effect. Which one is that? No, that's that one. Oh, it's that. Fantastic. It's funny, I play Minstrel all the time, but I really don't know what's going on under the covers with these effects. Okay, fun. Fairlow says you need to think about whether the item is still in the effect list when effect list or effect remove is called. I don't remember. Absolutely. Although one of the things I'm seeing, or was seeing before I made this more robust, was that for effects remove we get the effect. We don't have to care about that. And if the effect is added, hopefully that index is the correct index for what we're talking about. So I guess I think what we can do is take a look and see effect added. Okay, that's a legitimate thing that we could be adding. Added snowball tier 3, cool, ballad healing bonus, those are reasonable. Removed 3 and added 4, that's cool. Another ballad healing bonus. Like, these are all plausible names for what we're doing. So the indexing doesn't seem wrong on the face of it. Hurler thinks this behavior might be different than that between player effects and target effects. Yeah, like I said, from what I've heard, the player effect side of things seems a little bit more reliable than the target effects, which is really good because that's all we care about is the player effects here. Okay, so one of the neat things about this is we're only doing one thing at a time. And so what I'm wondering is, could that be more useful than scanning through every effect multiple times, right? Because each time something was happening, we were rescanning all of the effects. And so just looking one at a time, well, that seems kind of cool. But this window is currently kind of used to, burn it to the ground and then build it back up. Burn it to the ground, build it back up, sometimes multiple times per second. And so the real question is, okay, how do we adjust this? Now, what I don't know is there any sort of unique ID for an effect? Hey, all right. So effect members. Let me drag this actually out a little bit. We see a get ID. That's awesome. Is it different for every effect, or is it different for each type of effects? Like, are all ballad, whatever, healing ballads the same ID? So that's the next thing I want to know. Because if those are distinct for every effect, then we can use that to kind of track internally what's going on, if we're not already. So let me come back in here and say we have an effect name, ... and we're going to go ahead and add ID and args.effect. And I'm sure anyone who's already played with effects a lot more than I have already knows the answer to this. Let's see, get ID. And I want to go ahead and add that over down here as well, since that also should be a valid. Let's go ahead and reload and see how that looks. Ah, that didn't work. All right, what's going on here? That's line 237. Oh, of course. Oh my goodness. What I really should have is local effect equals nil. And then if effect is not equal to nil, because I have a lot of duplication here, it's not good. Even for a simple debug function like this, I can have less of it. So we're going to go ahead and just have a simpler equals. All right, so the effect is going to be here. The effect is going to be here. Awesome. And in this branch, we just want effect to be equal to args.effect. And in this branch, we want effect equal to EffectsList get blah, blah, blah. There we go. Now, Druidsfire is pointing out that it's almost the 15th anniversary of LOTRO, and hopefully that link has cool stuff in it, possibly canine related. All right, so this will be a little bit more safe because we're just getting the effect, and then in both places, we're doing the correct thing here. No! Why am I doing this so badly? Effect is not nil. Get, oh, of course. One too many calls to get name. Okay, good. So, what I'm really curious is to watch that ballad healing bonus fall off here. Lovely. 718143 went away. And ballad healing bonus added 718148. Now, the fact that these numbers aren't scaling wildly suggests to me that these numbers are unique to my character and almost certainly are session specific. Maybe not almost certainly, but they definitely don't seem like they're server wide, otherwise they'd be jumping up really fast. And they probably aren't very meaningful outside of this session right now. So I'm not going to try to cache those or persist them or anything. They almost certainly don't mean anything other than to give you a specific handle that when something was added and then something is later removed, you can match them up. And that looks really good. Excellent. Thank you for making stuff happen, Druid's Fire / Little Redhead. All right, so now that we've seen this, Thurlar says, yes, it's a unique ID for each instance of an effect within a logon session. Excellent. That's exactly what I was looking for. CK says there's a category. It's different for each one. That's a good point. Something I kind of ignored is what else do we have in this effect? So I'm just going to glance through here. We have a category, a description, duration, icon, name, and start time. Now, MinstrelBuffs uses start time aggressively in order to order the anthems chronologically. So I will go ahead and start an anthem, and then I wait a few seconds, and then I start another anthem. MinstrelBuffs is very interested in having the anthem that will expire next leftmost in the display, which is what we can see here. And it's even more obvious if we go ahead and restart the anthem of the third age here. Cool. So it's very obvious, and that's one of the prime benefits of this is if you're a minstrel who wants your anthems active, you really just have to care about that one on the left, because by definition, it's the one that's going to expire soonest. Thurlar says you can just run the effect itself and use that as an ID. Interesting, and quite possible it's already happening in. Oh, don't need that anymore. Quite possibly what's happening within the code. The code already is doing all sorts of stuff with effects and copying effects and whatnot. So it's probably already doing this. And I'm doing a lot of catch up here, right? Like MinstrelBuffs is heavily into effects, and I'm just figuring out what's going on. So what I'm seeing is that we're getting effects added and effects removed, and they seem to be ordered pretty reasonably. So we're not saying effects removed before they're added, I don't think. So I'm saying 5 is added, 5 is removed. That's interesting. Well, oh, that was Snowball. Oh, okay, interesting. So we have effect removed, repair finish 5, effect added 5. Okay, so maybe we're seeing some mix-up of orders. That's interesting. EXO says reapplying an already active effect might get a little weird. So it's quite possible that an ordering issue is what MinstrelBuffs was attempting to kind of work around in the beginning. Was the theory that I don't really care if it's removed and then added, or added and then removed. Like the ordering doesn't matter so much as the display gets the latest versions of things. Yeah, I can appreciate that. So if I go ahead and add something, we get added. Awesome. We removed Snowball Tier 1, we added Snowball Tier 2. We removed 2, we added 3. Those are good. More importantly, the things that are getting added and removed like this, the tiers, are things we don't care about for MinstrelBuffs, though. We're looking for that ballad healing bonus as a trigger to say that we have an active ballad, right? No, don't run to the edge. Oh, that's what happens when you accidentally hit the first and third mouse buttons. You start running. So having a ballad means you have this ballad healing bonus, for instance. And that's what we're looking for in the minstrel effects. So minstrel effects, valid ballad effects, we have the ballad healing bonus. Awesome. So that being added usually is pretty distinct from it being removed. Not always, and we can actually kind of trigger... oh, that's interesting. Where'd my combat-y thing go? Why is my combat timer not working? I'm just going to reload. Okay, there we go. So, if we trigger a new ballad just as this combat timer disappears, what do we see? All right, we added, we removed a bunch of things. Maybe it was not quite the right time. Yeah, I think it's not a lost cause to try and move forward with this as a theory. Now, Thaylor says you can display the game time and probably see the disordered pair occur in the same instance. Well, that's an interesting idea. Now, if we come and look at, we have a get start time, and get start time is probably just a number of seconds, maybe a finer grain than that. So let's go ahead and do that. We already have a tell me more. If we have an effect, then we can go ahead and start, and then effect get start time. Awesome. I really feel like I should recolor some of these things, actually. So effect added, if we do an RGB equals hash, I want to say. And then so added, so green is probably good for starting. Awesome. And we're just going to go ahead and do the same thing for effect removed, but that seems more like a red thing for stopping. Okay, let's see if I did my color tags correctly. Nope. What's the quotes? Do I not need quotes? Oh, interesting. CK says, yeah, there's a start time. Awesome. During Fires is the very important announcement. There's a once per account anniversary reward launching. Make sure you log in to the correct server first after the downtime for your reward. Cool, thanks for pointing that out. Thorolor says, something's weird with the stream. The apparent frame rate is about 5.5, even though the frames per second displayed is 30. Interesting. Thanks for letting me know. Hopefully the audio is coming through reasonably well. Okay, so yeah, turns out the quotes were not correct. We're asking a lot of my laptop. It's possible it's a hardware issue at my end. Oh, that's much more obvious what's going on. Okay. So we're just getting some stuff here. And then, what do we have? Induce action times, snowball tier 4, tier 5. We're moving 5 to 6, 6 to 7. Those are all happening in order. That's nice. That's of course the trouble of trying to reproduce a timing issue. Sometimes it just doesn't work. Well, there's an inspiring finish tier 5, and then another one added tier 5. Okay, so what's up with 7182? Oh, that doesn't highlight well at all. 718265. 718265. Okay, so that was a tier 7. 718265. Oh, no, 718268. That's fun. Okay, inspiring finish tier 5 was added, and then was removed, and then a different one was added. All right, so that's cool. Including the ID was helpful there. Now, the start time, we can double check. We got 7774, and then 7774, and then a new one. So the game decided to drop off, maybe it got refreshed in some way, and so it was a new effect even though it was identical. Apparently, Twitch is doing fun things. Oh, we actually got an email from our internet provider saying they were going to do work on the line at some point, which suggests that the line needs work. For Laura, so just cranking the bitrate down to 3,000. Yeah, I tried cranking it down from 6,000 to 5,000. I wasn't quite sure at what point the bitrate starts being relevant. Unfortunately, I don't think OBS will let me change the bitrate while streaming. Oh no, maybe it will. Let's give it a try. Apply. All right, well, let me know if that works and or the screen is legible. Okay, so that's really interesting. So we're seeing something being removed and then added, but in this case, maybe it's not at all wrong, or at least it's not wrong in an out of order sense. It's just confusing that the thing is dropping off and then being re-added at the same level. Maybe Inspiring Finish caps out at tier 5, and so the process is remove the tier and then add the tier, but if it's the same tier, then oh well. Okay, cool. So I'm not seeing anything that's going to be a problem here. So this has been a really interesting delve into the effects. What I'm seeing is for the adding, we're getting an index, and we need to use that index to go into the list. And fingers crossed there's no race condition that the effects list could change while you're looking at it. Apparently tuning the bitrate didn't specifically help. Well, I'm curious, does a bitrate of 3,000 like look reasonable given that this is mostly like text and not graphics? Like what's going on here? Also, I just minimized OBS and brought it back, and now it's thinking. Huh. This. Well, you know, despite how pretty Rivendell is being, I don't actually need it to be pretty. So I'm just going to dial down my graphics here, make sure it's not that causing problems. Rivendell's going to look a lot less exciting from on high, but it's covered up with text. Okay, so my next step is to figure out how does the system currently look at effects. Let's scroll on down to where it handles that, and that's currently the refresh effect display function. We've seen this before. They go ahead and copy off all of the effects, and then they sort the effects, and then they look at each of those copied and sorted effects to see if we care about it, and then if we do, we tell the buff window about it. Seems a little convoluted. So, I think what we want to do... Oh, I had a question, actually. A big thing for minstrels is if you have been out of combat, quote-unquote, for too long, all of your ballads disappear. And I wanted to see how that was going to come across here. And I assume we'll get a removal for each 3 of them. Phew, okay, I hadn't scrolled down all the way. Effect removed, index 10, 8, 7. 3 different ones. We have the healing bonus 287, 29, and 293, and we see each of those dropping off. Awesome. I did want to make sure of that. And then something else just disappeared. Okay. Awesome. So I think it seems like if we just feed these into the buff window and say, here's something that was added, here's something that was removed, the buff window can take the time to order them chronologically in the case of anthems. In the case of ballads, it does not care. that was something we talked about before, is there's a lot of logic happening here in main.lua, which is digging into the internals of the buff window. We're setting up which things are going to go in which positions in the buff window, and that feels very much like a thing buff window should be in charge of. If main is to do anything, it should just be like, hey, there's a new thing. Oh, it went away. And then buff window can figure out how that works. Now, if that's the case, we can come in here. Oh, what were we calling here? We were calling two things: show effect and show anthem. Cool. Okay. So the first one, show effect. Let's come on in here. Buff window start. I don't care about. Set anthem background from stance. Nope. Not worried about that. Get active stance. Nope. Is in yellow stance. Oh no. My water supply is dwindling. Oh, interesting. Get position might be interesting. I'm not worried about stop or restart. Get window visible. No. Cry of the chorus. We'll come back to that. Major ballad. Not going to worry about that too much. No. Okay. Trying to refresh my memory and see what is buff window doing. And the answer is quite a lot. Okay, so was it show effect? It was show effect. Now show effect, the idea was we would take an effect and an index and set it there. So get effect display, set effect, set visible, set visibility. Interesting. And then hide effect. Where does hide effect happen? Oh, here we go. Okay, so main window, after first showing n ballads, then tells the buff window to stop showing the rest of them. How wacky. Okay, I think the first thing we need to do is probably disconnect the refresh effect display functionality. Because we need to see this happening kind of from the start. I'll leave it there for effects cleared because, as far as I can tell, it may never happen. And if it does, that's more than we're able to do here. So at this point, everything should be broken, right? Because at this point, we're not doing the burn it all down and start over of refresh effect display. But instead, we might add something to buff window. We're going to add some side functions that are going to act differently than show effect and hide effect. Oh, and I suppose I should double check where else are we looking at this effect display. So get effect display. We have a function. Oh, ballad effects display. Okay. Where else do we look at that? We create it. Awesome. Our effects visible. Get effects display. Okay, so we're always expecting 3, so that's kind of hard-coded. That's fine. And what are these? These are indexed by I. Awesome. I kind of naively want to set up a parallel table with an index of the effect ID, and the I is where is the thing. Is that too weird? Because what I really just want to do is, if effect is removed, I just want to know where is it being removed from. But with ballads, if a ballad is being removed, all the ballads are being removed, right? There's never a ballad being removed. If a ballad's being removed, all of them are going. Either because you have been out of combat for too long, the 9-second rule, or you consumed them with a with a coda. The coda will consume all of your ballads. But either way, all of your ballads go. And this is currently the case. Maybe it'll change someday. But if a ballad goes, they all go. So I guess I don't care about the position. And you can't have more than 3 ballads, although maybe you could have a weirdness of one being added before another's removed. Oh, that's a good question. Oh, I don't have anything to fight against. Maybe I should go someplace where I can play around with that. I hear skirmishes are all the rage. Let's go an offensive. Yeah, Trouble in Tuckborough. That's a nice one. And we're going to drop this way down. I don't want to actually move from my spot in Rivendell, but I do need to go. Okay, this is going to get a little bit smaller. Okay. So. And I start off with a falconer. Oh my goodness. I tell you. Okay. Of course, my system here is still disconnected. I was hoping for something a little less wretched falconry. It's not my favorite of the things to deal with. All right, once it's down, I'm going to go ahead and reattach those functions so we can see them visually. Have the ballads appearing. Also, I really don't know if I care much about anything that's not a ballad effect. So I'm going to take advantage of the existing function that says, is this a valid ballad effect? There we go. What a wretched falconer. Let's go ahead and come back into main. We're going to go ahead and reconnect these things for a moment while we're playing around with this. And then, actually, if self is valid ballad effect, we kind of need the same logic, don't we? Okay. Let's make another function, a helper function. Function minstrel buff main. Now I have concerns about function dispatch overhead, so I wouldn't keep all of this nested functioning necessarily for live, but it's just going to be very helpful for this. Okay, so we want get effect from args, get effect from effect callback args. And then we can just replicate the same functionality here, where either args.effects is not a nil, or maybe that count is valid, and then we can return effect. Great. And then we can use that same thing here, get effect from callback args, get rid of all this. And then we can do the same thing here. So, first of all, we should double check. That could be nil. If effect is not nil, then and self is valid effect. There we go. So we want to do something like that, where we're only doing these outputs for a ballad effect. They're just too much clutter otherwise. And we can actually do the exact same logic. For effect removed, and then assuming there aren't loads of problems here. Awesome. Alright, I think I've run out of enemies here. Let's take a look at what that was. We added ballad healing, ballad damage, ballad power, another ballad healing. Oh, I see. So, the new one came on before the old one went off. So we got a fourth one that tripped the oldest to go away. Oh, you know, ballads are sorted chronologically, aren't they? Because if I do... Here, let me trigger this. When I do these in order, they are expiring first in, first out. Alright. Where does this counterattack come from? Oh, here we go. Okay. So. Yeah. Okay, so those are coming in first and first out. So those we want those to be chronological as well. And if we get a fourth one, we can kind of implicitly get rid of the oldest. Yeah. Okay. So, if we've seen 4 ballads added, we can... Another Wretched Falconer? What is going on here? This is like just the thing for solo skirmishes. So, it's not that I mind the Falconer. I love the Falconer's concept. It's the fact that they're 100%. Like, you could be a level 140 up against a level 20 Wretched Falconer, and until they've sent all their Falconers, they're just immune to everything. Like, Smaug the Dragon could be breathing down dragon fire upon them. And if they haven't sent out all of their Clavane, then you just can't do anything. And it's that utter immunity that just... A, makes it kind of annoying from a player standpoint, because, like, we're just standing here waiting. But B, from a lore perspective, like, what's going on here? Like, I don't understand the underlying mechanics of the Wretched Falconer. Like, the twins who absorbed each other's damage? Cool. Or the brothers of destruction? Love it. It kind of reminds me of the trolls in Dar Nargabud. Yeah, that's just strange. Okay. So, whatever solution we have needs to accept a fourth or more effect and just only care about the newest 3. Okay. Cool. Now, currently that's happening because the main function here is checking, making sure ballad effect places less than or equal to 3. Now, it's really interesting because that means when the thing is added, it's going to be wrong, but on the immediate next call with the removal, it's going to be fixed. So that all that redundancy is in place to kind of solve this problem, at least. In fact, we might even want to make a note of this. Note. When a fourth ballad is done, is sung, then we see that added, and then the first ballad removed. First in, first out. Okay, so that's an important note here. Anthems are probably not going to be the same, but it would be useful to, or we're not going to see it because we've excluded. Awesome. Very clever of me, but not great. Let's come in and say is valid effect. Add some extra parentheses here for a better parenthesizer. Or self is valid anthem effect. And then effect get name. And again, for real code, I want to call get name only once, but it's going to be fine for this. All right, I'm going to come back into the plugin manager, which got closed there during all that fighting, and see if we can't see some anthems in action. What I really want to do was see what happens when I add the same anthem. So we can see anthem added, anthem of third age, anthem of composure. Anthem of composure added. Oh, did I already have some? I might have. That was removed. And then anthem of third age added, and then a different one removed. Okay. Yeah. So it looks like the same thing. And we can document that here. Note when anthem is resung, we first add the new version, and then the old version is removed. So again, first in, first out. Although more one-to-one in that case. So we can definitely see that the logic's going to have to take into account this adding one, removing the previous. But if we can do that, we can avoid rescanning a possibly very long effects list and just care about the very specific instances. And that the buff window manages the chronological aspect of things. So we need the ballads to be chronologically ordered for it to make sense of which one's going to be replaced next. But the anthems only need to be ordered if we're in this variable mode. If we're in the fixed mode, we don't have to care about ordering there. Okay. Interesting. So in the buff window is going to need a couple things. It's going to need to track the ballads. Right now, ballad effects is a effect display. Well, what is that? I don't know. Let's find out. Turbine.ui. Oh, UI.LOTRO. Turbine.ui.LOTRO. And that's an effect display. And get effect displayed by the control. Okay. So we're storing our effects in these effect displays. Is that how we need or want to do that? Probably. I don't think on the face of it that's worth changing. I'm going to reserve the right to change my mind on that. So we have this ballad effects display. It's going to be used for our effects visible. Cool. Get effects display. And this is one that might be used. Okay, we know it's used for show effect and hide effect. Yep. Anywhere else? No. Okay. So get effect display. I think this is the big one, is the positional stuff needs to go away. We are either adding an effect or removing an effect in the new system. So new functions. We need function buff window add effect. In fact, it wouldn't hurt if these names kind of lined up a little bit more with the effect list. Which added, removed, cleared. Okay, yeah. Effect added. And why effect? We're going to go simpler. Ballad added. Okay. Oh, because it's an effect. Yes. Ballad added. So we're going to call that a ballad effect. Is that too verbose? Maybe. Okay, well, we'll just call it effect for right now. And its corollary function buff window, and that's going to be a ballad removed. And we're going to be able to key off the ID here. I still feel like it would be useful to have a lookup from ID to index, so that it's just a one-step lookup instead of having to look at each of the three and saying, are you the thing that I'm trying to remove? But, to think about that. Okay, so the simple thing to do when we're looking at adding a ballad, because we know they're always first in, first out, and there's only three of them, the simple thing would be to put the second one in the first spot, put the third one in the second spot, put the thing that we're adding into the third spot. And maybe that's all we need. So let's go ahead and steal one of these ballad effect displays. Ballad added, probably equals that, number -1, increment by 1 is a little bit overkill. We're really just doing two things here. And it's one of those things where if the number of ballads ever did change, boy, would that be a pain to revamp this UI without having loops like this. But this loop feels like overkill for 2 whole repetitions. I fully acknowledge that. But for this, we want to do self.ballad effect displays I equals self.ballad. Oh, do we? We only want to do that if all three of them are active, don't we? If self.ballad effect displays how much are we hard coding this? I'm kind of winging this logic here. Let's back up and do some pseudocode. If all three are filled, that is, if the third is filled, then move 2 to 1, 3 to 2, and then put the new one in 3. Okay, that's fine. If all three are not filled, e.g. if the third or second is not filled, then put the new effect there. basic logic would be so simple, and it would be hard-coded to 3 ballads. And I think I'm okay with that, just making it work and seeing what that's like. So, local... Do I want a local variable, or do I just want to do the logic? Yeah, sure. Local missing 1 equals self.ballad effect display 1 does not equal nil. Sure. Yeah, that feels overkill assigning to a variable. So, if that does not equal to nil, then end. Can this logic be simplified? If they're not filled, put the new effect there. Otherwise, I mean, we have to check all 3, right? I mean, this is why we often would just store a count, right? Instead of needing to check, we'd have a... well, Fairthine in the chat says, I forgot it's Tuesday today. It's Tuesday today! Welcome! I hear my stream is doing weird stuff on the technicals for some people, so hopefully you can see and or hear me. So, I am thinking that this is why we usually just would often just have a side counter that says this is the most filled thing, and then bump it up, bump it down. Farathan says I'm too late. Well, we actually got started an hour and 15 minutes later than normal because Scenario was doing their casual stroll through the North Downs. So I expect to be on for maybe half an hour more today. And what I'm trying to do is muddle my way through a better algorithm for MinstrelBuffs. And I feel like I'm recreating the wheel here because in effects display, it has a ballad effect place. You know, where is the highest place being used by an effect, a ballad effect specifically. And because main has that, buff window doesn't have that, I don't think. No. A lot of that what are things being has been offset to main. So I feel like, is this only being used in refresh effect display? Yes. So some of what it's doing is useful because then we don't have to keep checking are you null or you null or you null. As long as we do our bookkeeping correctly, we can go ahead and take this into account. So self dot ballad effect place equals 1. That is where the next ballad will go. In fact, ballad effect place, I feel like that's a little bit of a misnomer, right? Like, next ballad effect place might be a little bit clearer. Now, what we saw is that we're going to need to care about when that gets to 4, right? The next ballad, if it is 4, it means we're going to shift things down. But I think that's going to be fine. So let's come on back down here to our, to our new window. Sorry, new functions. There we go. All right, so let's change this logic. So if self colon next ballad effect place is greater than 3, then Um, mm. Why is this saying it's a missing symbol? They were just not done yet. Okay, so if it's greater than 3, then we can do this copying thing. All right, let's just put that into place. For as 1, to the count of them, minus 1, incrementing by 1. I'll often omit the incrementing by 1 if it is incrementing by 1, because that is the default. And I feel like it makes it read just slightly better for me. All right, so copying the values from those, and then self.valid effect display self.valid effect displays equals effect. And this is one of those cases where I would kind of want to call that parameter new effect or new ballot or something, but there's a lot of effects going on here. Missed symbol. Why do you think there's a missed symbol? Oh, of course, because a colon indicates a function call. Thank you, syntax checker. Okay. So we have, if it's bigger than 3, do that, and then add this at the end. Otherwise, go ahead and self.valid effects display self.nextValid effects equals effect, and then we'll increment it. Self.nextValid effect equals self.nextValid effect. There we go, plus 1. So that's kind of the idea. It might even be correct. Now, valid removed, we actually have a shortcut. If self.next valid effect place equals 1, then do nothing, end. Otherwise, we can just go ahead and clear them. And, you know, I'm probably not doing the full thing here. Set effect is probably what we want to do instead of equals effect. This is where I just don't know what I'm doing. Comes into play. Set effect, that new effect, and I wonder if set effect to nil is going to be useful. Let's pop back in here. Effect display, set effect. Yeah, let's assume set effect to nil is a good idea. Okay, so we have, for 1, we want to do all of this, and then that set effect nil. Maybe that's a good way to clear it. We're going to find out. In fact, I bet main knows all about this. Oh, it does show effect and hide effect, doesn't it? Okay. It's funny, hide effect just makes the thing invisible or non-visible. It doesn't actually clear the effect from in there. It doesn't seem to cause any side effects, but it's an interesting thing. All right, and we're going to do another call to set effect in the else branch here. Okay. So if the place is 1, otherwise do this and self.next valid effect place equals 1. Because when we're going to get 1 removed, we're going to get all of them removed, all 3 of them. And so we would like to do very little in that. A valid being removed, okay. for the first one, remove everything, and then just nope, nope. Okay. Well, those are some basic functions, right? We can add a ballad and we can remove a ballad. We can go ahead and try with that. And so we're going to come back to these functions. And let's go ahead and break out this extra conditional into simpler blocks. So if effect is not equal to nil, then we're going to do stuff. If local name equals effect get name, if self is valid effect name, then do something. And we can even throw an else in here. Else if self is valid anthem effect name, then. Now we're not ready to do anything with anthems at all, but that's okay. At this point, we can go ahead and do the call to buff window. All right, self.buff window ballad add is what we're going to do. Okay. Self buff window ballad added, and that's going to be effect. Awesome. And then nothing for the anthem quite yet. Now we can go ahead and capture that debug output, but the rest of that previous if-else block, we can just go ahead and nix that. And we're going to do this instead of refresh effect display. We're going to cut that out of the loop once more. Okay, and let's do the same thing for effect removed. We're going to break this conditional into simpler chunks. If effect is not equal to nil, then awesome. And then within that, let's do the same thing. Local name equals effect get name. Now, I have thoughts about whether we'd want to pass the name or an actual effect to the function saying, is this a valid effect? But that's for later. Okay, if self is valid. In fact, before I type more, let's just copy all of this from up there. Great. So we do want that to be effect removed, of course, and self valid removed. But other than that, it's all the same. Okay, so that is maybe working code. It is not working code, but not because of any errors. That's cool. And we see 3 effect removed. Awesome. Now, we should be seeing ballad added and ballad removed called. Let's come on in and test that assumption. So just a quick little turbine.shell.writeline. And we can just do, really just copy this invocation here. Chances are I'm just not dealing with these effect displays correctly. And that is part of the learning process. Okay, let's take a look at this. Cool, we can confirm ballad added got called, and we'll wait the 9 seconds, confirm that ballad removed got called. Perfect, okay. Oh, that's so funny. In my changing things around, I messed up the colors for effects removed. Not a terrible thing. Okay. So we know we're getting into these functions. That's great. So I'm going to say what's going on with next effect place. That's the first big thing. We should start it off with 1. So we should be getting into this. Is this correct? I'm calling set effect. Normally we would get the effect display. Set effect, set visible. One wonders why they aren't always visible now that we're doing this a little bit more thoroughly. So let's come on in to see where those are being created and see. Yeah. Oops. We're creating them with visibility equals false. And I'm wondering if that makes sense. Let's create them with true and see what happens. Oh, that doesn't look good at all, does it? On the plus side, we can see the things. Okay, I can see now why that's not how they do it at all. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. We'll need a set visible to true and false. Totally fine. So there's a fair amount of redundancy here because what we really want is the position, right? So local position to insert equals, and let's actually just default to self.next ballad effect place, at which point we can go ahead and use that. But in this branch, we want to go ahead and use the count instead. So position to insert equals the end there, and we can delete that code. Awesome. Oops. Well, that looks like it's plausible. Let's also pull in the set visible false. After we've set the effect to nil, let's go ahead and set visible to false and see what that looks like. Well, fantastic. Oh, interesting. Well, I don't know if that was because combat ran out or because the logic's wrong. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so removing the effects isn't quite working. Okay, interesting. We're removing one of them, not all of them. Set effect. I'm wondering if the set effect to nil is correct. Well, we weren't doing it before. Let's just go ahead and nix that. All right, we're just going to let that timer run out. Okay, apparently that's what we needed. So, I'm curious to see that with different ballad effects because it'll be a little bit easier to see what's going on. So I'll switch on over. Hopefully we have at least 3 things here because they don't survive very long. Is it working or is it not? Okay, effect remove didn't work. Okay, definitely the logic's not quite right yet. That's okay. Yeah, so when we hit these removed, I was hoping we could just get away with some shortcutting here, but I think the answer is maybe not so much. What if we don't bother doing that? What if we just call set visible on each of those? Well, that was weird. Let's go ahead and call that and take a look and see. What does that look like? Oh, I was completely wrong. Okay, because the effect remove is happening, right, we get the 4th and then we remove one. My logic was completely wrong here. This is either called after a 4th ballad is added to remove the oldest, or if all of the ballads are going to be removed. So I think it's safest to always just remove the oldest ballad here. And for that, we can do the same logic that we would normally do. In fact, we can make a shift function right now, just so that we don't mess up the code as we copy paste it over and over. Ballad shift. And for that, self ballad shift. And then would a ballad shift always... We're going to follow it by either adding something or moving something to the end. Ballad shift, position to insert equals the count. Okay, so we want to control the position to insert. So ballad shift, the position to insert is sliding over. So self.position to insert. Oh, sorry. Next ballad effect place equals self.next ballad effect place -1. And at that point, we can set the visibility. I'm concerned we're setting the wrong one. We've shifted. Let's say there's 2 of them already there. Our next to insert is 3. If we shift over, then 2 comes in. Oh, 3 would actually overwrite that. But we want 2 to be... Okay, yeah. Self.ballad effect displays. And that's going to be self.next ballad set visible. That might be a little bit closer to the actual logic we're looking to mirror. Huh. Yeah, I can see that there's still some logic problems. Attempting to access a nil field makes me wonder what that value was. If self.next ballad effect place is greater than, well, I should say if self.next ballad effect place is greater than 1, then decrement it. That'll prevent us from going too low. All right, let's get through this gate so we get some more suckers. Oh, permission to use that. What? Could have sworn that's how this works. Huh. Must be missing someone. Or I took so long to do this. Oh, I missed this. Of course. Great. Let's get some more suckers. Oh, of course. You know, under the covers, the problem with this algorithm is it's not taking into account the fact that the adding could happen first and then the removing. Would it be easiest just to have 4 things and only show 3 of them? So you add the 4th and then we shift? I mean, that certainly seems like an easy way. It's like, if this was 4, but 4 was never set to visible, what would that look like? So, artifacts visible, don't care. 4 is always going to be invisible. Get effects display, sure. Ballad shift, all right, so we'd shift them all over, nice, yeah. Added. So, if we're adding a ballad, if the next place to insert is greater than 4 for somehow, then we would definitely ballad shift. Otherwise, if the next one is 4, that's fine. And then if... Actually, I'm kind of curious to see what would happen if there's a fourth one. All right, ballad removed, ballad shift. -1. And the next place is setting... Some of that might still be good. We'll see. All right, that removal is still not working the way I want it to. But we're seeing the removal come in. So that effect, setting that effect to nil was wrong before, maybe it's still wrong. Let's come and deal with the Barrage instead. All right. Okay, so not right at all. So I think I'm doing impromptu algorithm design, and it's not going so smoothly because I just keep on trying to tweak what's there instead of taking a step back. So what we want to do is write down some thoughts here. So buff window, add effect, add ballad, and remove ballad thoughts. We need to accept a fourth ballad because the new ballad comes before the oldest is removed. When a ballad is added, we need to shift them as appropriate. When a ballad is removed, do we need to shift them for adding, or just on removing? Just add it? When ballad is removed, we should... Actually, that's a really interesting question. Is there any need to shift things, or should we... I guess it seems like we would never get over here. Okay, turbine.shell.writeLine. Too many ballads. And that was next is greater than 4. I guess that's where I'm falling out, is a lack of understanding of what's really going on under the covers. So let's go ahead and get into combat here. All right, well, I'm not seeing that too many ballads. But what I'm not seeing is the shifting that I would like to see happen as things get removed. So turbine.shell.writeLine, effect removed, shifting. Let's make sure that's happening. effect removed, shifting. We are seeing that. What we're not seeing is the actual shifting effect. Oh, of course. Oh, no. We should probably be doing a set effect and a get effect instead of an equals. Probably. Let's see what that looks like. Alright, come back here, Archer. Okay, now things are starting to shift. Oh, that's much better. For some reason, I thought an assignment operator was going to get us the result we wanted, and that was obviously not true. The effect display needs that set effect, get effect calling. Oh, so much better. Here I thought it was going to be hopeless. Okay, so I am not convinced this greater than 4 will ever happen with the adding, removing that we're seeing one at a time. But just in case, we have some code here. This branch should not be called. Now, I don't know how Lua does branch prediction, but some languages will assume that the true branch is going to be called, maybe, and so it can be beneficial to put the thing there that's going to be the most common branch. In that case, we would say, less than or equal, and then do the next thing. Otherwise, call this. Logic-wise, I'm going to let this stand right here, but it might be worth reversing these, maybe. This is certainly the normal thing, right? In fact, all right. If it's greater than 4, if it's less than or equal to 4, if that's a valid operator. All right. Will normally not be called. Okay. Well, if I've got those right, then we can go ahead and find us someone to get into combat with. Hua. Okay, so we've got a couple more people to test this on. So I'm just going to go ahead and rotate between the 3 different ballads here, so we can see the different symbols cycling through. Red should go first, and then green, and then blue. All right. Sorry about that. I gotta tickle my throat. Okay. This is delightful. And if I don't actually do another ballad here, Raging Marauder. Huh. I wonder if it's going to count for a deed. No. Okay. You have to be near level. Cool. And things are disappearing. This seems very promising. I'm really liking that we're not going through every effect. We're just looking at the effects as they come in and either adding or removing them. And if we add support for Anthem, then I think we'll be most of the way. And anthems, same thing. Anthems are going to come in chronologically. So if we're just sliding them over, well, I guess putting them in the first spot, then the second spot, then the third spot, and then more spots that just aren't displayed. I guess that's an interesting question. How are anthems done? Okay. So add ballad or remove ballad dots. We seem to have something that works. Anthems. Similar. Add to first spot, then second, etc. Remove from first spot, etc. How are extra anthems handled? Now, do we create a spot for each possible, even in non-fixed, question mark? That's the question I have, because if that's the case, maybe we just do the same thing. I do want to bring in that variable width UI, but until then, anthems are added left to right. When an anthem is removed, kind of by definition, it's the one on the left. We don't really even need to care about which one it is. I guess we do, because anthems can have different durations based on who put them there. And we do actually show anthems from other people. Okay, so for anthems, we'll need to pay attention to the time. But anthems can come from other minstrels who might have different durations. So sorting by time is still a thing. Now, for this, we can do probably just a simple insertion sort. Now we have, for an effect, we have get duration. Hopefully that's just a number. And we have the get start time. So get start time plus get duration, that's your finish time. And we can sort based off of that. Okay. I let the dogs out. Woof says in chat, at LOTRO stream, although I am actually at B4143562. LOTRO stream is hopefully hard at work today. Can I ask you something off topic? I would say very few things that are LOTRO related are off topic. So yes, my Palantir plugin shows weird boxes UI type. It doesn't exactly parse for me, but you're seeing something weird on Palantir. I don't know why this happens. Any ideas? Unfortunately, I don't use Palantir very often, but just for the sake of the question, let's go ahead and pull up the LOTRO, nope, wrong one, the plugin compendium. And we'll give it a second here to load. In the meantime, Fartham says, I never thought about the anthems of the other minstrels. Now, that's one of the neat things, Fartham, is if you are running, say, a blue line minstrel's heal, and you've got a yellow line or a red line minstrel in the party, as you should, minstrels are bestrels, then you might get, for instance, I would have my Anthem of Composure, Anthem of the Third Age Resonance, and I would also get their Anthem of War. Which is not going to be that helpful, but, why not? Okay, so my LOTRO plugin compendium, let's add a new plugin. Let's go ahead and add in Palantir. Now, which Palantir are you using? I let the dogs out, woof. I'm going to assume it is Palantir 3. Let's go ahead and install that. Looks like it comes with a bunch of things. And remember, when you've installed a plugin, you want to hit that green circle if you're logged in. Okay. So, you show weird boxes. Now, I guess the question is, let's go ahead and get Palantir to show for me. Oh, I don't have permission. Is there another banner? There is another banner. Over here. Go ahead. All right. The real question is how do we get Palantir to show up now that it's loaded? So, okay. So Palantir is up, and I haven't used Palantir very much, but it's looking pretty normal for me right now. We've got the slots for the various condition pots. We've got the how long have you been in combat timer at the top. And so for basic combat, and which is really all I've played around with, I am not an endgame raider by any standpoint. My character progression is definitely slowed by working on plugins. Okay. Oh, okay. So, Logs Wolf says, okay, your UI is working smoothly. Mine is weird boxes. I can't explain it better. The mana and health bars are boxy, like box on box on box. Interesting. Let me get back into combat so I can. Hey, Hail Chiefs, man. Okay, so just looking at it, I'm not sure why you would see box on box on box, but I would say the first thing is, in your plugins folder, go get them, Irby. So if you come into Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, plugins, you're going to find a folder called DU81. That's where your Palantir lives. So just to start, I would move that somewhere outside of the plugins folder, your downloads folder, your temp folder, or something. Probably unload the plugin first. Move that out of the way, reinstall it just like I did right here. Use the LOTRO plugin compendium. Thanks, Lunar Water. It is awesome. Just download it, reload it, and see, are you getting the same effect? You might be. And then the second thing would be in your plugin data. Just, after your plugins are unloaded, you can move your plugin data out of the way, reload your plugins, and see, does that fix it? Oh, that's an excellent point. Although, Fairthon says, do you have the turbine folder? I would expect the plugin not to even load if you don't have the turbine folder, but it is worth double checking. If you install it using the plugin compendium, you get that automatically for free. So, yet another reason to use the plugin compendium. Try moving the plugin folder out of the way, and then you can once your plugins are all unloaded, you can actually move your plugin data somewhere else, like your downloads folder, just temporarily. Load the plugin and see, was there something weird in a save file for the plugin? Now, if that was it, then the harder part is finding which file. But usually it's not the plugin data, so you unload everything, delete any temporary stuff that came, move your plugin and data back into place, that kind of thing. So, I mean, those are some kind of basic testing you can do. Just be careful not to delete your plugin data. It will make you sad. Make backups every once in a while is a good idea. But what I do when I'm preparing for the stream, just so I have a fresh slate to play with, is unload everything. I actually exit out of the game. But then I'll come in to Documents, and I have a plugin along and a folder where I store this. And all of my plugin data, I just move it out. So what it looks like is just, hey, I've got a bunch of stuff. Just move it. It'll take a minute to finalize. So this is what it looked like before the start of the stream. All of my plugin data is sitting there in Lord of the Rings Online /plugin data. But I muck with things on this stream. Sometimes we play around with installing extra stuff. I just want to slide all of my plugin data to the side. Do make sure your plugins are unloaded so they have a chance to save. and then just move them to your safe place for plugin data. And then the next time you load your plugin, for instance, if I load MinstrelBuff, it's as if it's the very first time that I'll have loaded that. Oh, that's exciting. Attempt to index something. 283 buff window. Well, let's take a look at that. I wasn't expecting an error message. In combat time display. Why is that nil? Huh. All right, well, for example, let's load up Palantir. So right now, Palantir, because I moved all of my plugin data out of the way, it thinks that this is the very first time I have loaded up Palantir. And so if there were a problem with plugin data files, by moving all the data files away, then reloading Palantir, you can make sure it's not a plugin data file. Usually it's not. And by moving the plugin files away and reinstalling the plugin, you can make sure it's not a plugin issue. And by those powers combined, if you've tested the plugin from scratch, if you tested the save files from scratch, the only other thing is it is possible to install a plugin that will interfere with how another plugin works. So that would be the next thing, is to make sure you only have Palantir loaded and no other plugins after you've done the fresh install, and see how does it look. Other than that, I wouldn't expect this to look weird on the face of it. It has its own image files. It has its own image files, and those are being manipulated by the plugin. So, yeah, that's really interesting. Thanks for asking that question. I hope that ends up being a helpful answer, but I know it's not a fast answer because it requires kind of digging into things a little bit. So let me know maybe next week. Come back and report your success or failures, and we'll dig into it more. In the meantime, yeah, what is... Oh, you know, that's funny. MinstrelBuffs is, just like any plugin, it expects to be loaded when you first log in. I'm guessing because I logged in while I was in combat, it freaked out. So let's add something to the to-do. To-do. Loading MinstrelBuffs while in combat doesn't work. Buff window tries to use something in combat time display before it is initialized. Cool. Well, that was a fun bug to discover. Okay. Well, I've run a little bit over now. While I finish out this skirmish real fast, let me know if you have any final thoughts, questions, concerns in chat, and we'll look at them real fast. But in the meantime, Tookland requires savings. Let's do it. All right. Yeah, we should ask more off-topic questions. Like I said, I don't really feel like there's a lot off-topic. If it's about LOTRO or Lua or plugins, it's great, right? Like, I'm working on a specific plugin, but I don't feel like asking about other plugins or plugins in general is off-topic at all. I recognize that plugin development is a little bit niche just by itself. It'd be way too niche if questions had to be about the specific plugin that I just happened to be looking at today. Especially because I have a very wavering attention. So sometimes they'll just be like, I want to work on this one today. And then, well, that's what we're looking at today. Ferelthan says, I'm thrilled to see the final result of your changes. Me too. I have a feeling that the logic is going to be a lot more straightforward. I don't know if it's going to actually be performance-wise faster. I have hopes. But I'm hoping, really hoping, that a lot of code can just be deleted. And, you know, code that doesn't exist is really easy to understand. Water. Hey, I'm sorry I'm late. Well, welcome! You've just seen me complete my one and only skirmish, and now we're back here above Rivendell. I was struggling to fix or improve the logic here for the MinstrelBuff plugin, but I finally got it, I think, for ballads. All right, well, it looks really kind of not great from up here. Let's put it up to medium. Okay, there we go. We have trees at least. Okay, you know, Thurlor was theorizing that the effects cleared might happen when one dies. And since I'm basically done, better than what they were an hour ago, so because Scenario came and did the casual stroll through the North Downs, I started an hour late. So this is me running only 20 minutes over. Okay, so yeah, let's test out Thurlor's theory that effects cleared might happen when you die. So I'm going to come back to main and make sure that we still have, let's see, effects cleared. Effects cleared, there we go. So in that callback, we're still calling Turbine to Charlotte Redline. Awesome. So if you're not a fan of minstrels falling to their deaths in Imladris, now's a good time to avert your eyes for just a moment. There we go. Nope. Well, I mean, I guess that makes sense because I still have story mode and difficulty deadly and subscriber buffs. I'm going to go ahead and do a retreat now. And it still didn't get called. So it's entirely possible that that's not a thing. Or maybe it could be a thing if I didn't have these perma buffs on me. Oh, hello. There's a friendly hunter here. Maybe if I didn't have any perma buffs on me, maybe if I only had temporary effects that could disappear, I could see maybe the last one getting removed could be supplanted by an effects cleared call. Yeah, Lunar Water, valuable. Yeah, hitting water at speed is not much better than hitting ground at speed. Exo thinks log out. Okay, fair enough. Now we'll have to keep a fast eye on it. I'm going to put this here in the middle. But let me go ahead and hit a log out. Oh, that's not well positioned. Oh no, crap. Sorry. I didn't actually see much come up on there. I meant to hit the cancel button there. Whoops. Well, yeah, maybe log out, but the good news is if we're hitting a log out, then my plugin can officially not care about that particular event callback. So if that's the only time it happens, then we're fine. Hello, Affodil. Yeah, so I don't think there's any harm in capturing it. I don't think there's any harm in capturing that event just in case, but I don't see it being useful for our purposes. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that image. I'm sorry Moobot squelched it so other people can't see it. Is that before or after you did some testing? Okay, a fascinating issue with, and that was Palantir 3. Okay, Palantir 3. I'm just going to go ahead and repaste that link. For any of the curious among you, it looks like that. Which I agree is, I'll go with suboptimal. That is suboptimal. And I let the dogs out wolf. Does it do that with only Palantir 3 loaded, no buff bars? And was that, I think I already asked, was that before or after you reinstalled the plugin? That is so interesting. All right, I'm going to drag that off. I'll log back in here for a sec. The one thing I would say is that kind of reminds me of mini raids configuration UI where it's like move things around, but it's doing it for a window, a LOTRO window, which is unexpected. It's like there's a missing background that it's trying to tile. Here, I'll pull that back out here. Yeah, it's like there's a missing background that is trying to tile across the window or something. Let me pull open my Palantir. And then options. Oh, it's a fancy options panel. Okay, you reinstalled. Exo asks, does Palantir not use the default LOTRO window scope? It certainly looks like the default. It looks like they've got a custom image over here on the right, which makes it look pretty spiffy. But the buttons all look themed. The window looks, correct for a themed window. These buttons over here on the right are a little wonky. That's super weird. Yumbo says hello. Hello! Exo says that's not the default. I'm using the default skin, so I wouldn't be able to tell just by looking at it if it's not the default skin. Oh, you're right. You're right. They've got a little different filigree. This could be a completely different background. Okay. I was thrown off by the corners here. Yumbo says, I would like to know how I can join PvP Arena. You're a new player. Am I dying? No. Okay, my pal. Oh, okay. I don't do a lot of PvP, but what I do know is that there is someone to talk to in South Bree, among other places, that can take you there. Now, as Exo points out, there's not really a player versus player in the sense that free peoples aren't really fighting free peoples. Elves aren't going after hobbits, and dwarves aren't trying to take out men. But you have a player versus monster player, or PvMP mode. Now, I believe it's not available on any legendary server. I'm playing on Treebeard, so the NPC that I would need to talk to may not even be there. But I'm going to talk to a far-ranging stable master in housing. That takes me to South Bree. We're going to ride up here into town. And then the NPC, from my memory, normally stands near the stable master here in South Bree. Maybe the Sergeant at Arms. Now, on a legendary server, like I said, PvMP is not available, but on any standard server like Avernite or Brandywine or Vanderval, all of those, you should be able to talk to someone here who will take you to the Ettenmoors, and there you can engage in PvMP. Oh, and as Little Red had pointed out, you're looking to get to the Ettenmoors. I think there might be one or two other PvMP places that exist, but the Ettenmoors is the one that comes to mind when I think PvMP. Yeah, I know Yuma95. There's definitely people out there who enjoy the player versus player experience that you'll find in other MMOs. But from a thematic standpoint, there's enough going wrong in the world of Middle Earth without, elves trying to shank dwarves in the middle of Breetown. Oh, and Godman asks, which VIP subscription is better to get? Is the 3-month a good deal? That's how I started. I wasn't sure how long I wanted to play, but 3 months seemed like a reasonable amount of time to dip my toes in the water. At this point, I think that's a really safe way to go. And then if it turns out you really like it, you could always do more. You could do a year subscription. But 3 months is a lovely place to start. If you're really unsure, you can do free to play, and starting tomorrow, I believe, a bunch of extra content is getting unlocked for free to play players. So if you're not at all sure about spending money, hold off until tomorrow, get access to a bunch of stuff, and then see what happens. All right, Little Redhead is pointing out in chat that some servers have a more active PvMP community, so that's definitely worth looking out. Maybe check on the forums and maybe ask there, or in your world, chat on your server. Oh, my phone is letting me know that I have run way over. So awesome. Thank you so much for putting those questions into chat. If you got anything really urgent, throw it in there. Otherwise, there are more streamers coming on tomorrow and throughout the week, and I'll be back next week. Let me go ahead and find that window. Yeah. Government says, you love the game, you're already level 10 and enjoying the game. Awesome. Then a 3-month subscription is probably the sweet spot. That's going to get you through the anniversary event and into the summer, and then you'll figure out if you still have enough time with the changing of the seasons. Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Firethen. I do hope to get better soon. Okay, that's all we're going to cover today. Be sure to tune in this Friday for a much of the day celebration of 15 years of Lord of the Rings Online. Community manager Cordovan is going to be popping into various servers and celebrating in whatever way he sees fit. And next Tuesday is Charlotte Skies' monthly Beneath Your Feet stream at 9 p.m. Eastern time, I should say. That being said, thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of LOTRO plugins. I do hope to see you next week. And until then, keep plugging along. All right, bye-bye now.